Jimmy, thank you. That was a great song to lead us in today's talk. So we're going to be talking about sharing treasures this morning. So when you think of treasures, what do you think of? Do you think of gold and money and adventure and fun? Perhaps famous treasure seekers like Indiana Jones or Jack Sparrow, they're always on an adventure to find some treasures, right? But finding treasures also takes hard work, dedication, and commitment. Have you ever done a treasure hunt? As a child, I did a treasure hunt, and if you followed the paces, you didn't always find the treasure where it was supposed to be, right? It was sometimes over here or over there. So you can be off a little bit, but know that it takes that commitment and that follow-through and the dedication to find where that treasure is and where it's buried. And if we think of Indiana Jones, he doesn't let anything stop him on his adventures to find treasures, does he? Because even though rocks are burrowing down a hill behind him, or snakes are in a pit in front of him, or bridges are collapsing, he uses his God-given gifts, his spiritual treasures, his talents, to overcome whatever obstacles are appearing before him. So identifying our spiritual gifts, our hidden treasures, it takes time. It takes commitment. It takes perseverance. And it takes patience. Because those spiritual gifts are hidden deep within us. And they need to be discovered. And like I said, they're not always where you think they are. They're not right in front of you. You have to do a little digging sometimes. And our spiritual gifts are the treasures we have to share with one another. It's like our spiritual DNA that makes up who we are as individuals, the gifts that we bring to the world. And even though we all may have the ability to have those gifts, we all have special gifts unique to us. And that's why we are asked to share our gifts with one another, so that we can embrace, include, and grow from other people's spiritual gifts to help bring ours up as well. Now let's be honest, we don't want to keep spiritual gifts to ourselves, do we? If we discover something new, the idea is that we share our spiritual gifts with one another. So Jack Sparrow, he wouldn't have kept the treasures to himself, even though in the back of his mind he wanted to keep all of the treasures that he would find on his outings. What did he do? He flaunted them and he shared them. He wanted to show everyone his treasures and his gifts. He didn't keep them to himself. So believe it or not, at one time, I did not know it was possible to become a minister. Because I grew up in the Catholic Church. And probably many of you can relate to that. But what I saw a role model to me in the Catholic Church was a man, a priest. He would never marry. He would never have a family of his own. And what I saw a role model to me for a woman was a woman, a nun. She would never marry. She would never have a family. She would never have any kids. Well, imagine when my surprise when my call to ministry came at 17 years old. I'm now 47, so if you're wondering, I'm 47. And so from 17 to 47, I went on this search to try to figure out, what I was supposed to do, because this is what happened. During receiving the sacrament of confirmation in the Catholic Church, you go before the bishop. They make the sign of the cross on your forehead and they say, "Be sealed with the gift of the Holy Spirit." When that happened, this tremendous sensation went through me, and it was like a whoosh, and I didn't know what it meant. I was 17, it had never been talked about. The mystical, the spiritual, the experiential, that had never been mentioned. I would not have said anything to anybody because I thought that was really weird. And in the Catholic Church, you're taught to fear and be afraid, right? What did I do? God knows I did something. And, he's letting me know that he knows, because, he. So what happened is I left the church that day. My cousin was my confirmation sponsor, and she had her hand on my shoulder. And as we walked out of the church, she said, "Did you feel that?" I said, "I did, but why did you?" So that was my first experience. And then I questioned for years, what does that mean? But the call wasn't going away. That call. The call wasn't going away, and at 28 I began exploring. I saw that there were spiritual centers and other places that were doing mystical exploration, and they were having these conversations that hadn't been spoken to me in the Catholic Church. And what I started to realize is that I did have a calling of some sort, and it was possible for me to become a minister. So fast forward a bit. I find myself in ministerial school, realizing I haven't seen anyone really like me in ministry. You know, I'd like to be involved in the community. I'd like to be experiential. I may do something a little off the wall or have something up in front, representing something that means things to everyone. So guess what I did? I started seeking out other ministers. I decided I was going to seek out other ministries that were doing the things that I felt I could do as a minister. And I began to awaken to the kind of minister I would become. I realized I could express characteristics that I've had all along and I had been suppressing because I'd been too shy to step into them. But all of this didn't happen overnight. It was a discernment process, a lot of conversations and meditation, asking for guidance. Ultimately, I was the only one that would discover the kind of minister I was to become. And that kind of soul searching doesn't come easy, because like Indiana Jones, there are hurdles to overcome, obstacles to get through. Usually it's me getting in my own way, is what it was. But I let relationships, school, and other activities take priority over what I was to be doing. I was not stepping into or embracing the call or the spiritual gifts that I had to share. So have you taken the time to explore your spiritual gifts? In 1 Corinthians 12, the chapter starts by telling us that we have all been given spiritual gifts. But where do they come from? And this is where I'm starting to apply some of the unity principles, because I believe this verse is telling us about mind, idea, and expression. Our spiritual gifts come from the mind of God, where the beginning of all things come. So the verse, chapter 4, says, "Now there are varieties of gifts, but the same Spirit. And there are varieties of services, but the same Lord. And there are varieties of activities, but it is the same God who activates all of them in everyone." So when you see that, gifts, services, and activities, those are ideas. Ideas are the substance that begins to take shape in the mind of God. And the next verse we have starts to talk about the expression where the ideas begin to manifest in the physical realm. To each is given the manifestation of the Spirit. They even say manifestation. For the common good. To one is given through the Spirit the utterance of wisdom. To another the utterance of knowledge, according to the same Spirit. To another faith by the same Spirit. To another gifts of healing by the one Spirit. The scripture verse goes on to say that these gifts need to be activated. Mind, idea, and expression. The beginning of all things. Ideas where substance takes shape, and expression is manifestation in the physical realm. I thought this would be a good point to call to mind all the YOUers who have blessed you here, the Unity of the Valley, for the past however many years, and they're getting ready to age out of the program that they have been involved in. They are ready to be that expression of God in the world. And I just wanted to have any of the YOUers who are here to please stand if you're aging out today, and let us acknowledge you, and just give them a round of applause. We love you, we bless you, we appreciate you, and we behold the Christ you are. In you, thank you. And we know that all the YOUers are going to be a blessing as they go forth and be the expression of God in the universe, because we've trained them well here in Unity, and they've grown up with you. And the purpose of identifying our spiritual gifts is so we can use them for good. And that's what they're getting ready to do, to go out into the world to be that expression of good. So the gifts you are looking for are not something you will find outside of yourself. Ultimately, other people can give you input, but it is you who has to make the discovery. It's something you need to find on your own, that you need to discover. I want to share one piece of my discernment process with you. So when we sign up and are accepted on the ministerial path in seminary, we think we are going to school to learn about theology, church business, religion, and we get there to find out there's something referred to as the hidden curriculum. I know some of you may know what this is. A show of hands if you've heard of the hidden curriculum. Yes. So the hidden curriculum is a point in our studies where we begin to look at the things we've separated in our consciousness to adjust to the world. So things that we don't recognize about ourselves that need to be called forward so we can be there for the churches that we go into, because we recognize we're not perfect. And so we're asked to pay attention to the things that upset us, and we become like guinea pigs to our fellow classmates, because we're all together in this, and we are in school together a lot. And so we all have our little things that, our little tics, our weirdnesses, right? So my first semester, I found myself getting irritated by someone. And I asked another classmate, is it just me or is it them? Because now I'm so confused, I don't know if it's my stuff or their stuff. And so it took 4 of us 45 minutes to have a discernment discussion and process to try to figure out what the unmet need was. And there were 2 of us that were trying to figure this out, and 2 others that were trying to help us. And what we figured out was the person who triggered me had no problem asking for help. They would ask for help. If it took them 20 minutes to figure something out, that was too long. And so they would ask people, and I'm like, why is that okay? And for me, I recognize that I grew up, I was the oldest of 3 kids, and my parents were busy. And so I would take the time, however long it took, to figure something out myself so I didn't have to bother them. So I realized in that moment that it was okay to ask for help. And it would save me 3 hours sometimes. And if you've tried to figure out a computer program or some application, you know what I'm talking about. It can be frustrating sometimes. So asking for help, what a concept, right? That was my unmet need I couldn't quite figure out. My classmates helped me do that. So like Indiana Jones, we have to begin seeking out our spiritual gifts and treasures. And sometimes they're hidden, the hidden curriculum. And we each have something that we cut off, that we don't want to recall or remember. There's some kind of disconnect. But that's what the digging, that's where the treasures can be found, to help you open up to something greater. The treasures are found to help us come into a greater spiritual awareness and realization for ourselves. So what are your spiritual gifts? Have you identified them? If you were in class yesterday, you may have a little jump start on some of the others here today, but you can help them discover some of their spiritual gifts as well. As true students, we are spiritual seekers. We are lifelong students. Anyone called to be in unity knows this, that they are lifelong students and they are always seeking to get a greater understanding and a greater awareness. I'd like to share a few interesting tidbits with you today, and I'm wondering if any of you remember what Indiana Jones was searching for in the first movie. Oh, don't be shy. Okay, he was searching, yes, thank you. Indiana Jones was searching for the Ark of the Covenant. Charles Fillmore tells us that the Ark of the Covenant represents the spark of the divine that dwells within each of us. So Indiana Jones was in search of the spark of the divine, preserving that so we all had that. Isn't that cool? I thought that was the greatest thing when I discovered that. So today's takeaway. Jewels and money don't compare to the spiritual gifts that make up who you are and what you bring to the world. That's today's takeaway. I'm going to say it one more time. Jewels and money don't compare to the spiritual gifts that make up who you are and what you bring to the world. To discover our spiritual gifts, it takes time, takes energy, perseverance, hard work. But the rewards are great. I invite you this week to engage and share your spiritual gifts with the world. Because you know what? We've been waiting. And on a final note, Indiana Jones and Jack Sparrow have not discovered all of their spiritual gifts. That's why there are sequels, you see, because they are still looking outside themselves. They haven't figured out that the spiritual gifts are right where they are. They don't need to go searching out here. Namaste.